think of one word or set of words to describe the PBS department, I think it would be minds in society.
It would be transformative.
I will use the word real-world behavior.
If I had to choose one word to describe the PBS department, I would say engaged.
I think the most exciting way that the PBS department can play a role in working towards the especially sustainable development is to get society and the people in society to think differently about how we want to live, how we want to run society in more sustainable ways. Because there's only so far that one can get with individual level behavioural change in terms of energy conservation, etc. If what is required is a radical rethinking of how we the kind of indicators we work towards in society and how we organise things globally, then we'll need to win over public support for that, and we'll need to help people to think differently.
Over the last decade, increasingly you've seen a move from an awareness that psychology and behavioural science factors contribute to many of these areas to something I think more deep at the moment, where you're seeing, for example, groups like the UN establish their own behavioural science units. You're starting to see all across the world psychologists and behavioural scientists being employed in depth to understand not just that these are individualised psychological factors, but rather to understand that there's an interaction between psychology and behavioural science and these bigger institutional and technological questions.
Before we even think about whether inequality is fair and what to do about it, we need to all agree about how much inequality is there in the first place. And what I find with collaborators is that your ideology influences that. So the more you support inequality, the less you think and the less you notice that it's there in the world around you, or conversely, the more you care about combating inequality, the more inequality you think is out there. And so because we're all having these different perceptions, it's going to be harder for us to come together to address it. But perhaps understanding the way ideology shapes our perceptions can help us to achieve that goal.
When it comes to climate change, I think that the Department of Psychological and Behavioral Science can help with two different aspects. One is, of course, to tackle what is the resistance that we can observe in behavior to change our way of life. And the other one is that when we can also favor some kind of behavior that could help people to engage and feel more empowered to address the problems that are related to climate change.
So when it comes to what I personally do, I have several different topics on which I focus, which are all related to climate change. So first of all, I focus on increasing sustainable food consumption. And we found several things. So in restaurants, especially at the time, it was very common that vegetarian food would have like a special section on the menu, which was called basically vegetarian food or vegan food. What we found is that when those foods are presented in that way, then people are actually not that likely to eat them. And that's because it's about identity. Many people do not identify themselves as vegetarians or vegans. However, if you incorporate those foods just in a normal menu without separating it with a different name, then this is not the case. Then people don't anymore look at those foods in relation to particular identity. They simply focus on what they like eating, and in that case they're more likely to actually choose vegetarian foods because they just check if these are the foods they like or not.
I think that psychology, social psychology, political psychology, behavioural science have a lot to offer in terms of how to tap into what people care about and how to get them to care about things maybe that they hadn't thought of, and how to reframe social problems and how we might do things as a society in ways that work better for more sustainable and more equal societies more generally.
So what we're really looking for is a generation of psychology and behavioural science graduates that lead and that really bring to the world the importance of embedding psychology and behavioural science in a structured and a coherent way and in an ethical way and in a meaningful way into public policy. And I think that's the type of students that we have in LSE and the type of students that we're seeing graduate out and move into these institutions.